Welcome to the new video of NeuroPhilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin the illusion of love. You say you want love, but pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, is it truly love that you seek, or is it the intoxicating feeling of being chosen? At first glance, they may seem identical. To be chosen feels like love. Someone points at you out of billions of people and says with their words or their gaze, "You are the one." That moment can feel like magic, like destiny, like a proof that you finally matter. But this is where the illusion begins. There is a vast difference between the act of loving and the hunger to be loved, and most people confuse the two. When people say they want love, what they often crave is validation. They want someone else to confirm what they cannot hold steady within themselves, the belief that they are worthy, desirable, significant. This craving is not about the joy of connection, nor about building something together. It is about silencing an inner voice that whispers of inadequacy. That voice, sometimes faint, sometimes screaming, says, "You are not enough on your own." And so the search for love becomes a desperate search for relief. Imagine two people entering a relationship carrying this hidden emptiness. Each one hopes the other will provide the missing piece. They do not come together to share abundance. They come together to feed off one another's attention. Every compliment, every touch, every promise of devotion feels like water to a parched throat. For a while, the thirst is quenched. The void feels sealed. But soon, the feeling fades, and the insecurity returns, stronger than before. The person is then left chasing, demanding, or pleading for more validation, mistaking this cycle for passion, mistaking this dependency for love. Where does this void come from? Often it begins in childhood, in the subtle or brutal ways we were made to feel unseen. A parent too distracted, a family dynamic that rewarded achievement but not presence. A rejection at an age too young to understand all leaves invisible. Scars. Without learning early on that our worth is inherent and unconditional, we grow up believing we must earn it. We believe we must be chosen to matter. That belief shapes every romance, every attachment, every heartbreak that follows. For a brief moment, when someone desires you, it feels as if everything is solved. Their gaze erases the fear. Their affection makes the emptiness vanish. But it always comes back, doesn't it? Because no one outside of you can permanently silence the voice inside. That is why Erich Fromm called this immature love. It is not love at all, but dependency disguised in poetic words. It is not the desire to connect, but the fear of being left alone with oneself. True love cannot be born from this hunger. As long as you believe being chosen is proof of your worth, you will confuse neediness for intimacy. And until you see through this illusion, love will not feel like freedom, will feel like addiction. The problem with being loved. Erich Fromm once wrote in The Art of Loving that most people do not truly seek to love, they seek to be loved. This distinction may seem small, but it reveals one of the deepest distortions of modern relationships. To be loved appears effortless, like a prize simply handed to us. Loving, on the other hand, demands effort, discipline, sacrifice, and vulnerability. And so, many unconsciously choose the path of least resistance. They chase the comfort of being adored, not the responsibility of giving love. Being loved feels like a solution. If someone chooses me, then I must be important. If someone desires me, then I must deserve to exist. Their affection becomes a mirror, reflecting back to me the image of a person who is finally enough. But here lies the trap. This mirror is fragile. Desire is unstable. Attention can be given today and withdrawn tomorrow. When your sense of worth depends on being loved, you hand over control of your self-esteem to someone else's moods, choices, and inconsistencies. One moment you feel invincible. The next, you collapse into despair. Think about how relationships often begin. The excitement of being noticed ignites a rush of euphoria. Every glance, every message, every sign of interest becomes fuel. For a while, life feels brighter. But what happens when the attention fades? When silence replaces constant reassurance? When the lover who once called you everything now feels distant? Suddenly, the entire structure crumbles. Like your savior now feels like a threat, because without their love, your worth feels erased. This is not love, is emotional hostage-taking. Fromm called this the passive side of love, being the object. The recipient, the one admired. Many confuse this with genuine connection. But to be desired is not the same as being cared for. Desire can flare up in an instant and vanish just as quickly. True love, however, requires stability, presence, and choice. When people mistake desire for love, they cling to intensity rather than intimacy, to fireworks rather than warmth. And in doing so, they set themselves up for heartbreak again and again. The obsession with being loved does not appear from nowhere. It is rooted in how we were taught, or not taught, to value ourselves. If, as children, we only felt worthy when pleasing others, we internalized the idea that our existence depends on external validation. As adults, this becomes a desperate hunt. For someone to complete us, we project onto lovers the responsibility to soothe our insecurities. But no relationship, no matter how passionate, can permanently heal wounds we refuse to face ourselves, and so, relationships collapse, not because of the absence of feeling, but because of the absence of maturity. When both partners seek only to be loved, the bond becomes a bargain. Give me proof of my worth, and I will give you what you want in return. But bargains always come due, and when they do, emptiness returns. The problem with being loved is not that it feels bad, it feels wonderful. The problem is that it tricks us into believing this feeling is the essence of love, when in reality, it is only its shadow. The need for fusion. There is a brutal difference between loving someone and needing someone. Most who say they long for love are not truly looking for connection. They are starving for validation. The hunger is not to share, but to fill. Is not about giving one's essence, but about being chosen as proof that the emptiness inside can be silenced. Erich Fromm named this the neurotic need for fusion. It is not love, is the attempt to dissolve into another person so completely that the unbearable weight of being oneself momentarily disappears. What most people call passion often masks this desperate search for fusion. Think of how intoxicating it feels when someone clings to you with urgency, as if you are their entire world. At first, it looks like devotion, but beneath it lies a quieter truth. They do not want you for who you are. They want escape, Want you to hold them so tightly, emotionally or physically, that the voice of self-doubt inside finally goes silent. For a moment, the fear of being alone vanishes, the insecurities evaporate, and the ache of emptiness is gone. But only for a moment, and soon the cycle repeats. Fromm warned that this longing is not desire, is dependency. It is not intimacy, it is addiction. In symbiotic relationships of this kind, two people merge, but neither remains whole. They confuse merging with loving, thinking that becoming one body, one soul, will save them from separation. But instead of creating freedom, this bond breeds suffocation. Instead of love, it becomes emotional captivity, where both partners unconsciously demand from each other the impossible. Make me feel complete forever. This cycle does not begin in adulthood. It begins much earlier. In childhood, the way we were seen or ignored by those meant to love us forms the foundation of how we relate later in life. A child who was not accepted unconditionally learns to fear separation. That child carries the wound into adulthood, seeking in lovers what was missing in caregivers: reassurance, presence, unconditional safety. The need for fusion is really a regression, a symbolic return to the womb where one could once feel whole and undivided. But no partner can replicate this state. No one can permanently relieve another of the responsibility of being themselves. And so, adults play out old pain in new relationships. They chase intensity as proof of value. They confuse emotional urgency with love. They call dependency passion. The result is a roller coaster of euphoria and collapse. The high of being chosen, followed by the devastation of being ignored. Like any addiction, the craving intensifies over time, leaving emptiness even deeper when the fix disappears. Fromm was clear. This is not love. It is a union without integrity. A relationship built not on freedom, but on the terror of separation. What many experience as overwhelming romance may in fact be emotional addiction, a hunger to be validated dressed up in the language of soulmates. Until this is seen clearly, love will remain a mirror of wounds, not a meeting of wholeness. The wounded child. Have you ever noticed how rejection in adulthood can reduce you to the helplessness of a child? Why does being left unread by someone you care about feel like abandonment? Okay. Why does the fading of attention feel like the collapse of your entire world? It is because beneath the adult mask, confident, capable, compose their lives a wounded child, silently crying for something it never received. Every heartbreak in the present reawakens that old pain, and every craving for love is, at its root, that child's plea to finally be seen, held, and valued. Erich Fromm did not use the phrase inner child in the art of loving, but everything. He describes points directly to it. The way we love as adults is shaped by how we were loved or unloved as children. A child enters the world completely dependent, needing nourishment, protection, touch, and above all, the assurance of emotional safety. If that safety was absentee, love was conditional, inconsistent, or withheld, the child absorbed a dangerous lesson. I must earn love to deserve it. That belief never disappears. It burrows deep into the psyche, shaping every relationship that follows. As adults, we replay this script over and over. The wounded child inside whispers, "If I am perfect, they won't leave. Please. If I please enough, they will choose me. If I am useful, I will not be abandoned." And so we strive endlessly, shrinking ourselves, giving too much, begging for crumbs of attention, mistaking sacrifice for love. But none of it works. Because the wound is not in the present, it is in the past. The partner who rejects you is not the true source of your devastation. They are only the echo that stirs the old ache. This is why so many relationships feel disproportionately painful. A breakup does not just end a romance, it awakens the child who once felt unworthy, unseen, disposable. That is why the pain is so consuming, why it feels unbearable. The rejection is not just today's. It is every rejection you ever endured, compacted into a single wound. Fromm makes a distinction between childish love and mature love that strikes at the heart of this problem. In the childish form of love, I love because I am loved. In the mature form, I am loved because I love. The wounded child remains stuck in the former, still needing proof before daring to give, still terrified of offering love freely without assurance it will be returned. This is why relationships often become cycles of testing, pleasing, clinging, and despair. They are built not on freedom, but on the desperate strategies of a frightened child. But the tragedy is not permanent. Healing begins when you finally turn toward that child within, not with scorn, but with compassion. When you stop demanding that others soothe the wound they did not create. When you realize the problem was never that you were unworthy, but that you were taught to believe you were. The path to true love begins only here with self-acceptance, with reparenting that wounded child, with the courage to say, I no longer need to be chosen to know that I am enough. True love begins. True love begins exactly where need ends. It is not born from emptiness, nor from the desperate longing to be saved. It does not come from the craving to be chosen or the fear of being alone. Real love arises only when you have faced yourself fully, your fears, your insecurities, your solitude, and chosen to stand whole. Only then can love be an act of freedom rather than dependency. Then does love cease to be a survival strategy and become a conscious choice. Most people confuse love with rescue. They wait for someone to complete them, to erase the void within, to silence the voice that says, "You are not enough." But this is not love, is bargaining. It is the unconscious contract. Prove to me that I matter, and in return I will give you my devotion. Such agreements are fragile. The moment the other person falters, the illusion collapses, leaving only emptiness again. True love, in contrast, does not demand proof. It does not cling. It does not plead. It gives, not because it needs, but because it overflows. Erich Fromm was blunt. Love is not a passive experience, not something that simply happens to us. It is an art, and like every art, it requires discipline, commitment, patience, and practice. To love is not to fall, it is to rise daily with the decision to give. To love is to show up, even when passion fades, even when disappointments arrive, even when life weighs heavy. Love is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of maturity. It is the courage to remain present, even when walking away would be easier, and here lies the hardest truth. You cannot give what you have not first cultivated within yourself. If you are fractured inside, you will unconsciously use others as patches for your brokenness. If you have not resolved your own inner separation, you will expect your partner to carry the burden of healing you. But love cannot bloom in dependency. It demands wholeness. It demands that you stand on your own feet before you reach for another's hand. When this shift happens, love transforms. It ceases to be a cry for help and becomes a conscious act of creation. You stop searching for someone to fill your emptiness, and instead, you meet another person from a place of fullness. You no longer cling out of fear, but share out of abundance. This love does not bind or suffocate. It does not demand or manipulate. It builds, it nurtures, it expands. It is not the fragile spark of being chosen, it is the steady flame of choosing every day. True love begins when you no longer need to be chosen to know your worth. When you declare to yourself, "I am already whole," every relationship you enter changes. You are no longer seeking completion, you are seeking connection. You are no longer begging for validation, you are offering presence. That is when love becomes real. That is when love, at last, becomes free.